Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for being here, really on a momentous day for the people in the state of Illinois. A few years ago, the Illinois legislature passed and we enacted the Compassionate Cannabis Program. And it was a pilot program when we enacted it. We didn't quite know how much of an impact it was going to have on the people in the state of Illinois. But I can tell you firsthand, it's been tremendous. My own personal story, I have a husband whose arm was amputated in a car accident. And he could walk into a doctor's office and they would immediately take out their prescription pad and write prescriptions for opioids. And if he were to take an opioid, he goes completely blank. He found the use of medicinal cannabis is almost life-saving because every time he takes an opioid, he misses out on his kid's life. And with the use of cannabis, he doesn't have to hide in the basement on a day when he's in pain. He can be acting with our children, going about his daily life and not having the severe pain that he usually suffers. Now, with this piece of legislation, we are going to make sure, with the expansion of the conditions on the list, that more people will be able to use cannabis compassionately and have relief from that pain that really sometimes takes living out of life, and they're going to get that back. I really first want to thank the members who've been with us all along, the members who are part of the original Medicinal Cannabis Board, Dr. Leslie Mendoza-Temple, and Jim and Sandy Champion, who really have been champions to make sure we usher this through, and all of my colleagues who are up here who've really worked hard to make sure that we could provide this relief for the people in the state of Illinois. This is something we should all be proud of and be happy that we have this compassion in our state to help relieve the people who might be suffering from this type of pain. With that, I would like to introduce the Governor of the state of Illinois, who worked with us to make sure that we could get this legislation through. So thank you so much for being here today. Governor Pritzker.
Thank you very much, Senator Fine. Thank you for your leadership. I'm really grateful that we were able to do this here at Memorial Hospital. Thank you to everyone here for allowing this. And I want to start by thanking the legislators who championed this effort, who shepherded this bill through on behalf of patients everywhere in the state of Illinois. Representative Bob Morgan, everyone knows that you have been, from the very beginning, someone who has pushed and prodded, demanded, and made sure that this legislation would get through the House of Representatives. Senator Fine, thank you for your leadership. The legislators who stand behind me and with them, all our members, both parties represented, who fought hard in their chambers to make sure that this happened. I also want to recognize that the people who have been fighting this fight for, well, really longer than I can remember, and certainly much longer than I have been in office. Sandy and Jim Champion, thank you again. You've been advancing compassionate care for many years now, and we wouldn't be here without you. To members of the Illinois State Medical Society and the former Medical Cannabis Advisory Board, thank you for putting patients above politics. And to Ashley and the entire Surin family, the world is a kinder place because you had the courage to share your story, and I thank you for that. Since the enactment of our state's medical cannabis program, over 80,000 patients have been enrolled across the state. That's 80,000 patients living better lives. And today, in signing 2 new laws, we're telling each and every one of those patients, we're on your side. The first piece of legislation, which I signed on Friday, brings our medical cannabis program in line with my administration's vision for equity, and it makes adjustments for the lessons that we've learned since its inception. The previous administration stood in the way of the development of that aspect of the program, allowing the advisory board to disband and rejecting new qualifying conditions, including chronic pain, despite the recommendations of experts statewide. Ignoring the guidance of medical professionals fails patients who live with debilitating conditions. This new law reverses course, naming 11 new conditions as eligible for the program, including chronic pain. And I'm proud to say that we're putting Illinois back on the side of the patients who are suffering and the medical professionals who treat them. Under this legislation, we're promoting social equity on the business side of medical cannabis, just as with our new recreational system. We're allowing all our counties to execute greater control over local tax revenue. And we're expanding the community of authorized medical professionals who can certify patients for the medical cannabis program, which offers rural communities the access that they deserve. In addition, today I'm signing another bill, one that gives families flexibility on where and how their children who are ill can receive medical treatment. Illinois has a few hundred medical cannabis patients under 18 years old, all of whom have serious conditions. Previously, they could only receive their medications from a parent or guardian on school grounds, disrupting workplaces and complicating their lives in the classroom. With this legislation, students can take the medication themselves under the supervision of an administrator or nurse if authorized by their parents. These are families who have experienced immeasurably difficult obstacles. This legislation gives them the choices that they deserve. As we continue to reform state government so that it better serves its families, we must do so in a way that advances dignity, empathy, opportunity, and grace. In each of these things, this legislation moves us forward. Now I'd like to introduce, I mentioned him earlier, Representative Bob Morgan, who from the moment that he entered the legislature has proven himself to be a real leader on many topics, but very importantly, he wanted to make sure that we got our medical cannabis program right. And he has tweaked and worked every day to make sure that that happened. Ladies and gentlemen, Representative Bob Morgan.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much to Governor Pritzker, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, and all the people that are here today, medical cannabis patients, advocates, former members of the Medical Cannabis Advisory Board, and all of you that are here today to talk about the future of the medical cannabis program. It's an honor and frankly quite humbling to be here today to talk about this legislation as the governor signs them into law. So thank you all for being here today. I have been working on medical cannabis legislation and policy for the last 8 years. After seeing delays, broken promises from state administration after state administration, time and time again, I could not be happier to see our governor signing these bills here today. These changes are years in the making, literally years. The medical cannabis program has faced major setbacks time and time again, and specifically, and to me most jarring, was the evening of Sunday, January 11th, 2015. It was the transition, and medical cannabis patients were caught in the transition between two governors, one outgoing, one incoming. We saw the medical cannabis program as a limbo. I made a call to my good friends, Jim and Sandy Champion, that night, and we may have cried a little bit. And we talked about the future of the program and the ways that we could help and fight for the interests of medical cannabis patients. And I pledged to Jim and Sandy that night that I would not quit until all medical cannabis patients have access to this program. And I believe this program and these laws fulfill that promise. SB 2023 stabilizes the medical cannabis program. It ensures that access for patients will be there for years to come. As we legalize adult use, I'm grateful that this state will remain committed to providing relief to patients suffering from chronic, debilitating conditions. This bill makes the program permanent instead of expiring in the summer of 2020. It adds all the medical conditions recommended by the Medical Cannabis Advisory Board, a group of physicians and advocates and patients that spent hours and hours and hours looking at every piece of research available to consider what conditions should be and should not be added to this program. And it expands certifying medical professionals to include registered nurses, also physician assistants, and not just physicians, not just doctors. This bill also ensures social equity is a major component for future medical cannabis dispensaries that are awarded in Illinois. This social equity piece was lacking and missing for many, many years, and this is long overdue. Patients can rest assured that the people on the stage and the people that have worked on these pieces of legislation will remain a priority. Medical cannabis program and patients will remain a priority for all of us. We will not turn our backs on the patient population, even as legalization dominates the news in 2020. Also today, we get to sign SB 455, which is about making sure that young people have access to this medicine while being able to go to school and camp and just be a kid. It's about stopping families from having to choose on one hand between their child's education or their child's physical well-being. These bills are about access to health care. After all, we have made it so easy in Illinois and across the country to have access to lethal opioids, as opposed to non-lethal, safe medical cannabis. This legislation fixes that. So starting today, these new medical cannabis conditions are eligible and you can register, including chronic pain, migraines, autism, and other eligible conditions. With the governor's signature, we are putting Illinois on a path for better healthcare outcomes, because of the availability of medical cannabis and a person's medical treatment plan. And that, my friends, is what I think of thinking big. This is a big deal. There's still a lot of work left to do in this bill and many others having to do with the medical cannabis program, but these bills will stabilize the medical cannabis program at a time where some patients might have considered giving up their card for the ease of access with legalized use. This really was must-pass legislation. When I talk to my children, Ari and Mira, about what I do as an elected official, I tell them that I try and help people. And for a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, that's a really tangential thing to say and doesn't really have meaning. So I wanted this specifically to be something, and I point to them to show them this is helping people. This is a bill that I fought for because it actually helps people. So again, thank you, Governor Pritzker. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. Senator Christine DeCastro, who could not be here, who is my co-sponsor in the Senate, lead sponsor in the Senate on Ashley's Law and SB 455. Senator Laura Fine, and all the legislators on both sides of the aisle that made this a bipartisan effort. All the medical cannabis patients and advocates, the medical cannabis online community, all those that worked for this for many, many years. Specifically, a few patients that the governor also mentioned, and advocates, Jim and Sandy Champion, and the person I'm about to introduce, Maureen Surin, and her family, her daughter Ashley, who was the namesake and the impetus for the bill, SB 455. So with that, it's such an honor and pleasure to introduce Maureen Surin.
First off, thank you for having us here today. We're honored and privileged to be invited, and all your hard work. And Christina, not here, but in our hearts, she's here. My husband, my daughter are here, and I just have to say that if we go back and tell you a little short version of our story, she had cancer at age 2 and moved into epilepsy at age 3. And the epilepsy was caused by one of the chemotherapy meds. And we couldn't beat those seizures that she kept having, and we tried many neuromedicines. And after concussion and brain surgery 2 years ago, we just said we have to take a different path. This little girl is trying to grow, and her poor body can't grow if it's drugged up with different medicines, and she can't think or talk or walk or speak or write. And I'm so proud to say that we found some doctors that did integrated homeopathic medicine, and they said she needed to consume cannabis and go on a low-carb diet, and my gosh, they were right. And our daughter is now living and not surviving. She was lost, and now she's gone. Christina. We're so proud of her, and we're so happy that this program is continuing and expanding, because it's like a miracle that our daughter is doing so well, and I can't wait to see what she does next. So thank you all, and we're so excited. She is a year and a half now, seizure-free on medical cannabis. Thank you. With that, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton.
Thank you so much, Marie, for that introduction. But also thank you for sharing that powerful story, because that's what today is really about, moving people from simply surviving to living. So thank you for sharing that story and telling us why today is so important. To Representative Morgan and Senator Fine and all of the legislators, thank you for your leadership, and thank you for all of your advocacy to get us to this day. And of course, Governor Pritzker, I'm always so proud to serve alongside of you as we do all that we can on behalf of the residents of Illinois. And this is yet another piece of legislation that expands equity across our state. By making the medical cannabis program permanent, expanding access to veterans, and expanding the list of medical conditions, we are ensuring that families all across our state have access to the health care that they deserve. The use of medical cannabis means being able to have a better quality of life for thousands of Illinoisans, including those like the champions and others who stand here today. For some, that means being able to live without debilitating pain because of a disease, or in the case of Ashley, a middle schooler from Schaumburg, having a cure for seizures that had taken over her life. To Ashley and the thousands of Illinois families and residents, we are proud to stand alongside of you and do all we can to make your life better. This is for all of you. Governor Pritzker, thank you for signing these bills. In doing so, we're sending a message across our country that is loud and clear, that Illinois puts our families first. We lead with equity at the center, and we are hard at work to make sure that all of our communities are healthy. And so now, for the moment we've been waiting for, I'm going to ask Governor Pritzker to come forward and sign these bills into law.
happy to take any questions from members of the media. Maybe we'll get the sponsors of the bill together around the answers for that.
Some of the issues that have been brought up, the legalization, the recreational use, including allowing for medical patients to go at home, but we, law enforcement are wanting to kind of check, have them register with the states or with local authorities so that they can do checkups. Is that something you're willing to entertain? Maybe even to the sponsor of the bill to talk a little more about the trailer bill that we.
Sure, yes, and there may be a trailer bill needed, but Bob, would you mind?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.
So the question about whether or not we will address changes to home grow in the trailer bill, I think there's going to be a number of issues that would be addressed in the trailer bill. It's still being worked out right now between sponsors, Senator Staines and Representative Cassidy. This is obviously an issue doing with home grow that the IML has dealt with and addressed in the past. I think their voices were heard. I think other voices were made and heard as well. So I'm not sure if that will be changed. I think that that's a discussion that's going to continue. Medical cannabis patients will be able to home grow up to 5 plants starting January 1, 2020. So as with any other aspect of this program, I think we're going to see any kinks in the program that need to be addressed. But I think that's going to be an ongoing conversation.
How should that be regulated? Is there also concern about privacy issues?
Yeah, my personal perspective is privacy for patients. We already have a program that's pretty strong in terms of when law enforcement needs to identify somebody as a medical cannabis patient. For instance, whether or not they are driving impaired, or more specifically, they're driving with medical cannabis in possession. Law enforcement has that ability right now. So I'm not sure my personal position is I don't know that we need to change that at all for home grow. I think medical cannabis patients throughout the state have been exceptionally responsible, as we have not seen any issues over the last 5 years of use of the program. We expect that to continue. But again, I think that's an issue in particular that we'll still discuss.
Governor Pritzker, there's a FOIA bill that already passed in the House. It's poised to pass in the Senate. It makes a number of references to cannabis and possession of it in a home, and that could require someone to have to forfeit their weapons if they are operating cannabis. As the state moves toward adopting legal marijuana in this expanded medical program, what's your view, and can you offer any assurances to gun owners that if they partake in this medical home grow program or medical marijuana at all, will they be able to keep their FOIA card in their home?
Well, this is another area where I think we're going to have to watch as the program is developing. I know that we're going to be looking at this fix the void issue coming up, but we've got to be careful about it. I don't have a direct answer for your question because we're still looking at the angles on how you might write that into the law. But suffice to say, we're aware of the challenge there, and we're going to try to address it.
Can either of you talk about the taxation difference between medical and recreational on January 1st?
The medical cannabis program, in terms of the taxation of the product, will remain unchanged. So right now, it's taxed at retail sales tax 1%, much like a pharmaceutical drug, and that has been since we started the medical cannabis program. So that will continue. As many of you know, the legalization bill has a different set of taxation. Depending on the product and depending on what municipalities do, that will be 15% or higher on the actual taxation. So there will be a difference there. It will be one of the reasons why it's important to make sure we stabilize this program for patients that are looking to make sure that they don't have to pay more and more for the product.
Governor Pritzker, changing the topic for a second, the Attorney General just ruled that DCF has improperly withheld public information from me in our Project Illinois investigation regarding the employees accused of falsifying information. What are you going to do to get transparency so that we know that children with DCFS ties are being cared for appropriately?
Well, I'm the first person to say that we want full transparency, make sure that we're revealing any information. Look, I'm the one, I think, who stood up and said that we have got to reform DCFS. We need to not only bring out all the challenges, and some people can see some of the challenges, but there are many challenges that lie underneath that we've tried to lay bare for everybody, because we want to fix them, and we want to make sure that we're bringing in the right people to do so. So, as with this issue, we need to be as transparent as we possibly can be. We want to, again, address all of these issues, and as you follow the issues here and many others among the press, it is frankly a good thing, I think, for the public to hear what those challenges are, and for us to learn. Sometimes you're learning things at the same time that we are, because there are so many challenges. You know, when I walked into office, it literally was, the whole organization was rife with, one after another. And that's why we brought in Chapin Hall to start with, and that's why we have a number of advisors around the organization now. So suffice to say that we'll try very hard to to be as transparent as we can in every case. Where we're not, I'm sure that you'll bring it up to us, but I am demanding as much from DCFS.
Governor, why is Illinois behind other states on sports betting?
Actually, as you know, there was an article about this. The neighboring states that passed it a little earlier than we did. That's number one. And number two, we're making sure we also passed a very large gaming bill along with sports wagering. And so we want to make sure we get it right. The most important thing here is not speed. The most important thing is integrity of the program, making sure that we're doing it right, implementing it right. And so that's what we're going to do. We'll obviously work expeditiously, but again, with that as our guiding principle, that is integrity, making sure that we're doing it the right way.
Governor, Thomas Pritzker, who I believe, if I'm reading your family tree, is an older cousin of yours. He was implicated in the documents that came out over the weekend, saying that he had solicited checks from Jeffrey Epstein trafficking. As a member of the Pritzker family, would you call it he stepped down as ISD?
First of all, I was unaware if he knew Jeffrey Epstein at all, and as you know, I do not. At this moment, I just say that I think that justice needs to be pursued here. There, of course, were some terrible things that were alleged here that Jeffrey Epstein seems to have done. And so I hope that the justice system will pursue the allegations that were made to the fullest extent of the law and make sure that the victims get the justice that they deserve.
Governor, Wednesday's Governor's Day, but Senator Tom Fullerton is also going to be arraigned. Actually, about it on Thursday. So we're talking about corruption in Illinois. What are you going to do to help fix that perception? And apparently, it's not a perception with much people getting elected.
Well, I've said before, and I really believe this, that our elected officials need to live up to the highest measures of integrity in public service. I know that case is being pursued. Whatever day that happens to fall in is not the most important thing. What's important is that we find out what the facts are and then pursue justice against whoever it is that may have committed any acts that are against the interests of public integrity.
One more. Should step down? Should he step down?
Well, as you know, I think he stepped aside or was asked to step aside from the chairmanship of the Labor Committee, which is an area that the allegations were made in, and I think that was appropriate for us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.